Welcome to You Decide. I'm your host, Errol Lewis. The countdown continues as we get closer and closer to the mayoral primary. The date itself is on June 24th, but early voting starts on the 14th of June. We have been talking to all of the Democratic primary candidates, and this week my guest is Adrienne Adams. She is the New York City Council Speaker, first elected to the council in 2017. She represents District 28. That includes all or part of Jamaica, Richmond Hill, Rochdale Village, and South Ozone Park. She made history as the first woman to represent the district. And then in 2022, she broke another couple of barriers. She became the first Black lawmaker to be elected Speaker of the Council, and also the first ever council with a woman representing a majority of the 51 seats. First majority woman council in New York City history after a mere 300 or 400 years. She was the last of the candidates to enter the race for mayor, a move that was encouraged by several prominent Democrats, including the state attorney general, Letitia James. They are, among other things, looking for a high-profile alternative to Andrew Cuomo. And she's here to talk about how the race is going, why she got into it, what she's been hearing from voters, and what vision she has for the future of New York City. So glad to have you here. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, it's great to be here. It's podcast world.
It is podcast world, right? You like the new studio?
I do.
It's nice,
I
right?
do. I do. A lot of ambiance.
It's a vibe.
Very
yes,
cozy.
It's a vibe. How's the race going? Unlike a lot of the other candidates, you actually have a day job that takes a lot of work.
I do.
And you're in the final stages of a budget that must be passed by law by June 30th, which is about a week after the primary.
That's right.
How's it going?
It's going well, actually. We are definitely right in the swing of budget negotiations. I was with the budget negotiation team earlier today, and we're coming right along. We have got to pass this budget by the 30th of June, and thank you so much for recognizing that I do have a day job. So I'm right now, and I don't drink a lot of coffee, for the record.
Oh, okay.
So, I'm just running. I am running purely on my own adrenaline, on my own fire, on my own faith right now, and I feel really, really good.
So part of your pitch, I've heard you say to voters, is that you'd be going from one side of City Hall to the other, from the east side to the west side. But of course, it's more than just walking down the hall, right? The mayor really sets the agenda for the government. What would be the priorities for a mayor, Adrienne?
The priorities in looking at everything, the way that I process things, the first thing will be to bring in the right deputy mayors. Errol, I'm a leader that appreciates leadership. That's the way that I've always managed coming out of the private sector in corporate America for almost 20 years. In being that manager, you cannot be a good manager if you don't have good leaders behind you. So I brought that philosophy in with me as speaker. I brought it in by appointing the most competent folks I believe to be chairs. I mean, we can call Councilmember Rita Joseph, in the DOE for decades, chairing the Education Committee. Councilmember Althea Stevens comes from nonprofit in the world of ACS. She wears youth on her heart. She is our Youth Services and ACS chair. Councilmember Mercedes Narcisse, registered nurse, chairing the Health Committee. I could go on and on and on, but that's the way that I lead. So my priority coming into the mayoralty will be to make sure that people that have already done the work, people that are already experts in those fields, to oversee the bigger picture of the city of New York, I will put into leadership as deputy mayors.
How do you determine who's going to make a good leader? Do you size them up? I mean, some of what you said is, it's on their resume, but there are a lot of people who have stuff on their resume.
Absolutely right. And again, coming out of corporate America for a very long time, I was in human capital management. So that's HR. So you know how to interview people. You know what to look for. You know how to size up people's strengths and weaknesses. And I'm really good at that. So in already having that strategy under my belt and already having done that for a very long time, I think that it's going to be, pretty easy for me to go ahead and glean that when it comes to appointees.
The current mayor, when you saw the team that he was assembling, did any warning lights go off for you?
Sure. I saw a lot of friendship and my concern in watching the friendships come in as leaders and really people that would be responsible for the lives of over 8 million New Yorkers. Sure, I was concerned. On our side of City Hall and legislation, the staff of City Council alone, hundreds of staff, the majority of whom have been with the council for years and years, for over 5 years. When we say goodbye to folks and wish them well on their retirement, we're saying goodbye to folks that have been around for 10, 15, 25 years. We've seen leave, just as early as for as long as I've been speaker on the city council. So we're talking about decades of experience. So when I watched the leadership, I was concerned. I did not, doubt that they came in with good intentions or the work that they'd done in the past, sure. But this capacity for this different magnitude of city government, I was very concerned. Yeah.
So, this is kind of a core difference between your corporate world, 20 years that you spent there, and the political world, where you sort of have to reward certain people, or you're expected to, or the logic of the job kind of leads you toward making sure that your allies are not disrespected or ignored, right? So you've got sort of a built-in tension there, right?
Not unlike corporate America.
Frankly, right.
It's all among the same thing. There's got to be a balance between, your likes, your dislikes, someone that's aligning with you, and aligning with your values and your precepts and the way that you work, sure. You look towards those things, and hopefully you look to advance those types of people that are going to be in your circle and that think like you do.
Yeah. It's interesting. Some of the people in the current administration who ended up getting in trouble, I was thinking they never should have had that job, and you could give them something else,
yes.
I mean, you can come and party at the mansion, you're still my friend, but not that particular job. So I noticed that lots of other key players in the budget process are also running for higher office. So it's you, the chair of your finance committee, Justin Brannan, running for controller, the current city controller, Brad Lander, also running for mayor, and of course the mayor himself is trying to get reelected. Does all of that add up to a budget? Should we expect an excessively generous budget? Our key groups this is not a time where any of you has any incentive to say no to anybody. Really.
I would hope not. I would hope that none of us has an incentive to say no. The current mayor of the city of New York. So we are hoping to do the best by all New Yorkers in this budget. I think that we're in a really good place. We're not in a perfect place, yet. I don't know if we'll ever get to perfection anyway. That doesn't happen in the real world. But we're in a pretty good place right now, and where in previous iterations of budget negotiations and doing this with this administration, we have had some kind of seesaw moments, and the council has always been under the belief that we have the finances, we have the funding to do this. New York City is not broke, and we are very, very good stewards of our finances, particularly in the city council. We always have been. So we can stand on that strength. That's the strength that we're going to stand on right now in passing, 2026.
Yeah, you talk a little bit about that because, it almost never even makes it as a news story when the revenue estimates come in.
Yeah.
And I've learned over the years that, this is where the real fight starts, right? I mean, if one side of City Hall says that you have $2 billion more than the other side says, then there's your fight right there, or there's your first negotiation.
Yeah, so true, so true. And when you watch the different entities that line up, this forecasting of the funding or the budget, if you will. You've got OMB on the administration side, then you have IBO, and you have the city council. So the three entities never agree on the budget numbers or where we land. But typically, you will find that OMB on the mayoral side is always extra conservative.
Sure.
And what we've found in the past is that has been to the deficit of work that we can do and should have been doing. And city council, again, we lean back on that experience in finance. We have financial beasts in the city council that have been doing this thing long time, right? So they know what they're doing. We have forecasters that have been doing this thing forever. Oh my gosh. And I will always lean on their strengths. They are my experts in doing this. So when I take a look at the way that they are lining things up for the people of the city, I trust them. And I understand OMB wants to be conservative. I get it. We rainy day fund, by the way, everybody, came from the city council. You're welcome. You're welcome. Came from the city council. And we continue to build those funds up for the rainy day. Yeah. City council continues to build up reserves. But the reality is that we've got more that we can do more with for the city.
What did the first majority woman council accomplish that you most want voters to know about?
Everything. Everything that's been on the back burner for families in particular, for children in particular, for Black women in particular. So much has been taken out of sight and made in plain sight. We're talking about these for LGBTQ community. I mean, you name it, Errol, and it's the real people of New York that have been prioritized under my leadership as speaker, quite frankly. When you take a look at college, I'm real proud of CUNY Reconnect. I could talk about it all day long. And you know that we've brought in, we've re-enrolled thousands.
Yeah. Let me explain that to my listeners for a minute. This is one of the most brilliant things anybody ever did, I think.
You're welcome.
CUNY is huge. They give out 50,000 diplomas every year. They have 250,000 kids enrolled. But over the years, there are lots and lots and lots of students who they accumulate credits, but they never quite finish. Right. And so a strategic, very targeted effort to go and find and people, have them re-enroll and make it a little bit easier. Because when surveyed, I think half of them or some large percentage was because they didn't have a Metro card.
That's right.
Or they needed, they needed,
ridiculous.
They needed some night classes, not all night classes, but some night classes, and then they would be able to pick up their credits. And so you created a program to help make it easier for them to do that.
Yeah, and it falls back on the heels of how I grew up with a dad that drove a UPS truck during the day and went to your college at night, and had some college credits accumulated. And it was just incredible to me because I started out at York and did a year and a half of my school, my beginning of college at York College, CUNY, very proudly. But and I say this a lot, it was not cool to go to school with your dad.
Right, not just CUNY, but the same campus. Oh, no.
Same school, so it was like, how was Professor so-and-so? And I'm like, Daddy, I don't want to talk to you about this, okay? Just don't.
You're young and single at the time. Oh, no.
Exactly.
Oh, no, that's a buzzkill.
Oh, my gosh. So, but I digress because I always get triggered by that. Sorry, Dad. I always get triggered by that. But my dad did get his degree in economics.
Good.
From York College.
Good.
So fast forward, to now I'm actually have been one that actually has something to say about that and who gets to do that. So the initiative that I created, CUNY Reconnect, brings in students that have some college credits, but for whatever reason, were not able to finish to get their degrees. Mm-hmm. So initially, we put forth a couple of years ago $1.5 million to take care of students that wanted to come in. I thought I would get maybe 10,000 students coming in, maybe 14,000 students. Errol, as of right now, as we sit in and talk today, there are almost 50,000 re-enrolled students in CUNY. Yes. And it is one of the proudest moments. Every time I talk about it, I just, it is so humbling to me to think that there are students out there, every age, from their 30s that are coming in as, parents, mothers, fathers, grandparents.
Sure.
There's a gentleman that I met a couple of months ago, graduated in his 80s. In his 80s, proudly now has a degree to further whatever it is that he wants to continue in his own life. So we have an intergenerational phenomena, amazing phenomena.
Yes. Yeah, no, that's how it's done.
I'm
Listen,
really proud of it.
My late father, it took him about 11 years to get through John Jay. And that was at a time when John Jay at least would be free for you if you were a cop, right? So he's in NYPD. Yep. And he just kept at it and just kept at it and just kept a couple of credits here, a couple of credits there. It took him over a decade. Look, let's take a short break for the podcast and keep going on YouTube. We're going to keep talking here. And I wanted to ask you, Adrienne Adams, about sexism.
Yeah.
What is it that prevents you, and there have been other candidates before you, who are running to become what would be the first woman mayor of New York, but who don't make that the centerpiece or even necessarily an important part of the pitch to voters? Do the strategists tell you that it's not worth doing? Does it stir up the sexism? Is it just kind of how politics works?
Oh, gosh, what a question. I've seen both sides of it. I've seen where people say, in my camp have said, mention it to be the first woman mayor. And then I've seen in other places, where I've actually spoken out and said, I would be the first woman mayor, and people have gone, women. Have said, it doesn't matter, man, woman, whatever, you're going to be our mayor. So it is very, very hard to determine what that thing is that matters to some and doesn't matter to others.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting to me. I mean, I just, I've gotten a lot of bad feedback, or I should say, I've gotten a lot of pushback for a lot of things that I've said on the air over the years. One of the things that got the most pushback was we were talking about Hillary Clinton, and I think I was on CNN. And I was like, well, yeah, there's a lot of sexism out there, and a lot of people are just never going to vote for her because she's a woman. And oh my God, people were just outraged that I even suggested it. And I'm like, well, come on, guys.
It's true.
I mean, come on. Like,
it's true.
I'm not blaming anybody. I'm just pointing out.
Even with the conversations with Kamala, when she was running for president, we saw the same thing. We saw men come outright and say proudly, I can't vote for her. She's a woman.
Right.
It's a thing.
It's a thing. No, it's a thing. I spent a lot of time in locker rooms. It's a thing, right? A lot of time in barbershops. In fact, they cut off all my hair. I want to go back. You mentioned that your parents were proud union members who raised you up in Hollis, Queens. How did they end up in Hollis?
They ended up, my parents, well, let's just say that our roots are in South Carolina, small town, St. Stephen, Pineville, about 40 miles or so from Charleston. Okay. So that's where our roots are. My dad's parents migrated from South Carolina. My paternal grandmother had 9 children, and they came up slowly to New York. And my mother actually, my mother came up as a teenager. She lost her mother when she was very, very young, when she was a child. My mother was the youngest of 8 children of 2 sets from my grandfather. The first wife had 8, and the second wife had 8.
Oh, boy.
Hello, South Carolina.
So a big family reunion.
Big family reunion, yeah. So my mother was the youngest of the first set of 8. And she ended up coming to New York as a teenager because she was the youngest and everyone else was married, and, she came up and lived with a family member. So that's where, and she lived in Harlem with a family member, graduated from high school. My dad, like I said, migrated with his parents and siblings, went into the Air Force, and they had known each other from high school in South Carolina, and got married, and had me, and we lived in East Elmhurst. I was born back in the day in Elmhurst General.
Wow.
And 9804 23rd Avenue was the home that I was raised in for 5 years. And then my parents moved, my sister and I, to Hollis, Queens.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
You've got the whole story. Nobody ever asked me that stuff. That's so good to tell that.
Well, I mean, I just, I know if anybody asked me my own story, it wouldn't start with, I got out of college and came to Brooklyn and tried to find a job in journalism. There's a backstory, right? There's a backstory. You attended Bayside High School at the same time as Eric Adams, the current mayor. I can't tell from the way you talk about it. You guys talk about it kind of sideways, right? I can't tell if you were friends back then or if you were in different circles or if your circles were not intersecting or necessarily interacting all that well. What was
I'll tell you. We were in totally different circles, all right? At Bayside High School, still pretty segregated when we were going there in the late 70s. The percentage was maybe, I want to say 60-40. I may be off a little bit, and Black students were still in the minority. So we all knew each other. So I just start from that, from that basis. So we all knew each other. There was no way not to. But, Eric, had his set of friends and I had my set of friends. I was more with we were a mix of nerds and trendy people. So we were like nerds and cool at the same time because back then, we were totally down with doing a hustle, and parties and all of that stuff. But we were totally down with making sure that we would try to get straight A's at any cost. So we were studying with each other, making fun. And we would take songs like disco songs, Errol, and we would turn them into word problems. That's how cool we were. Yeah.
Okay, no,
but
that's
Eric wasn't running with that kind of a crowd. He was running with a different kind of. I will let Eric tell his own story. But we knew who Eric Adams was in high school.
He's told many versions of that story. That's partly why I was looking for a second opinion here. And then tell me about your time at Spelman College, because you go from York, you go to Spelman, and I just assume that everybody knows what it means when you say Spelman, but that's actually not the case, right? It's a college for Black women. It started in the 1880s, named for Laura Spelman Rockefeller, which a lot of people don't know, one of their big benefactors. It's kind of a storied place, at least in the Black community, right? So Alice Walker is a graduate, Stacey Abrams is a graduate, Marion Wright Edelman is a graduate, and when they list it, they have Adrienne Adams up there too. Rolanda Watts, the broadcaster, for those who remember that name. Why'd you go there?
Ooh, something else nobody's ever asked. I like this interview. I went there because my parents had separated at that time. And my sister, who was 2 years younger than me, had already gone off to William and Mary. She started college very young. She was 16. Wow. When she was a freshman at William and Mary, and her friends would leave her crayons at her front door just to so she wouldn't forget how young she was.
Right. And the punchline is she didn't throw them away, right?
Exactly. So while, my parents always maintained, friendship throughout the separation, and all of us took my sister down to school, I was still very protective of my mom. I was best friends with both of my parents up until the time that I lost them. I wanted to stay with mom for a little while longer. And my mom was a correction officer. I tell that story all the time.
Yes.
So there came a time where I, as the oldest child, felt that it was time for me to separate now. My sister was okay at college. My parents seemed to be okay in their separate lives. And it was time for me to figure me out. So I researched schools, wasn't too hard. Spelman was always at the top of my list. I wanted to go to an HBCU because it was something that I wanted to experience as a Black woman. Spelman College was beautifully isolated as that college for Black women. And I went there and it changed my life. Maya Angelou delivered the keynote speech of my graduation. Cicely Tyson got an honorary degree, changed my life. I walked behind Sammy Davis Jr. even as in his older years. He was on his way to Sisters Chapel doing something or other, and I don't know, but I just knew Sammy Davis Jr. was walking in front of me. Folks would come to the campus during that era. Eddie Murphy, several very young stars that were coming up during that time would, frequent Spelman. I went to school at the same time as Dexter King. We were at school at the same time. Dexter drove.
Martin Luther King's son.
Martin Luther King's youngest son drove a red convertible and was very popular with the girls. I was not one of those girls, by the way. But whenever you'd see that red convertible, it'd be, Dexter, who's in the car with Dexter?
Oh, yeah. No, he had that wavy hair and could talk like his daddy.
Errol,
what else could you want, right?
Yes. That was my era at Spelman. Unforgettable, fantastic, magical, and created the woman that I am today.
And did you steer any of your kids towards HBCUs?
Yeah, they didn't listen to me.
Okay.
They didn't listen to me. Our kids, and we have a blended family, so I raised 4 children, like I gave birth to all of them. But they all decided to do what they wanted to do and live their separate lives. One of them at one point, no, all of them, because they do still all gang up on us, on my husband and I. You guys are so perfect, and you wanted us to be perfect, and we can't live up to your standard. Like, no. You're millennials, and you're privileged.
Right.
We tried to give you that Cosby life, and, it was what it was for the time that it was. But my husband and I got blamed for that, wanting them to be too much like the Cosby kids.
Well, you know how this works, right? If you deprive them of anything, they blame you for that. You gave them everything, they blame you for that.
That's right.
So that's how it is.
That's right.
So Well, the woman that you are, when people complain that the city council is run by radicals, what I've mentioned to a few people is like, first of all, that's not true as far as I can tell. But secondly, if you think what's coming out of the council is out of left field, you should see the proposals that never see the light of day.
You better believe it.
That's what I wanted to ask. I wanted to ask you about that because, the process is that anybody can submit a bill.
That's
right. And then, the staff will work with some of them and the leadership, meaning you, will encourage some and maybe, smother others or send it to committee or send it to oblivion or something like that. Talk about some of that process and the ideas that didn't get traction that probably should not have gotten traction.
Yeah, there are too many to speak of. But I will say this, is that, recently there was a write-up that we haven't done enough legislation compared to, some of my predecessors. And my answer to that is that this has been an extremely thoughtful council that I am very, very proud of the legislation and the things that we've brought forward. I mean, we can take a look at reproductive rights. We can take a look at protecting abortion rights, especially when this president's Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. We were the first ones to jump out there and said, oh, no, not in New York. We have to have a fund to make sure that any woman that wants to come to New York for safe abortion care, reproductive care, has it right here in New York. So we fund that through the city council. Also, Black maternal health, something that nobody liked to talk about before I got here and started dealing with this thing, and other council members started dealing with this thing because it's a real thing. So we started to provide free doula care, primarily in Brooklyn, in your borough, because of members like former council member Alika Ampry Samuel and others that championed this doula care through. So I'm speaking about the good stuff that's come out. In the LGBTQIA world, I mean, we've got council members that have fought and fought and fought, putting themselves out there on the line. Councilmember Tiffany Caban, no matter what our differences may be politically, and we do have them, no secret about that. The work that she has done on behalf of the LGBTQ community has been outstanding work. She and a lot of others have worked, Eric Botcher, and I mean, we can go on, with the caucus. It's just been amazing work that they've done. So the work that we have done has been extremely thoughtful. But yeah, there has been, some legislation that, has been brought up. It would never work. It would never fly. And we have to remember, too, we're legislating for over 8 million New Yorkers, not just in the interest of our own feelings. So I have always, tried to tell my members, we cannot legislate on feelings. We have to legislate on the greater good. You cannot legislate solely by thinking about your own district, because you are a council member for all New Yorkers. So that's something else. And the other thing, most prominent thing, especially now that the issue of housing continues to come up, I have always said to them, we will never be the council that says no when people need a place to live in New York.
It always bears repeating that this is not 51 people who wandered in off the street, right? Each of them was elected. Each of them have commitments. They have constituents. They've made promises. And most of them, I would say nearly all of them, are fairly serious about trying to sort of honor those commitments, right? Making it happen, of course, is your job. Talk a little bit about the mental health roadmap. This is something that, indirectly people may characterize it as a public safety issue or as a health issue or as a public nuisance issue, but how do you see it?
Thankfully, again, through the leadership of Councilmember Linda Lee, when speaking about appointments to chairs and appointments that I would make in the future as mayor, this is another significant appointment who comes out of the mental health field in the world of nonprofits. So, in taking a look at how we could better alleviate mental health issues and help those who are in mental health crises, the council created a mental health roadmap. And what this does is incorporate several different features of what it takes to prevent mental health crisis and help those who are in crisis and that may not have the resources that it takes to get them help. So we have looked at mobile teams, very successful. We've looked at clubhouses where the mayor wanted to take money away, from clubhouses that actually bring people into settings where they can relate to each other, where there is peer-to-peer counseling. The city council has brought all that back. We have funded it, resourced it, community-based mental health programs. We've brought that back. I've also championed trauma resource centers we've got 4 of them now, that actually do bring in folks that need therapy, that need help, to help them with issues where they perhaps have been victims of gunshot. Those that have been victims of domestic violence and just violence, things that perpetuate violence in our communities. These trauma resource centers, the first of which actually was initiated by JCC in Greater Coney Island. Again, Brooklyn. I said it. But this is real stuff, hitting home for real people. But these are the positive, so many of the positive things that the New York City Council has done, particularly this session under my leadership. I don't think that we talk about it enough.
I have a frustration. I wonder if you share it, which is that, different innovative ideas will come forward, right? There's some group you never heard of who says, we've done all kinds of research. We've looked all over the world or all over the country. And this unusual maneuver, which might not make sense to you, something like, say, the clubhouse model, where people who are mentally ill form a peer group, and there's less reliance on, doctors and nurses and medical supports and more just reliance on each other. Sure. And it works better than you might think. They just say that, right? And I'm like, I'm a journalist. It's my job to look into things and say, okay, I'll look up what happened in other jurisdictions. I'll come and look at your program. You can convince me. I'm open to it. It strikes me that there are a lot of people who have their minds made up that the city works in a certain way and that you're supposed to, call the cops for this or throw people in prison for that, and just kind of let the market determine this. And it's very hard to get them to see even the possibility that for completely apolitical reasons, not because you're trying to get an advantage or make a buck or anything like that, but that there's just some really interesting stuff out there. I mean, that to me is what's fascinating about cities. Yeah. In the political class, I feel like some of that is lacking. And I say that even as we're going through this process of trying to pick a new mayor. I'm looking at people's proposals and I'm thinking it's like, that's not terribly creative. That's been tried for the last 40 years and we know it doesn't work.
You're so right. You're so right. And I'm finding, particularly, in this campaign season on the campaign trail, you're right. I've been trying to convince folks to think out of the box. That's what I've been doing as speaker, thinking out of the box. And thank goodness, again, this women majority, we've been right along with it, pulling this thought, this great thought that other people are either afraid of doing or just don't have the will to really research this stuff. There are so many models in other cities that are doing things, just great things. New York has the capacity to do these things by leaps and bounds. Heck, we can take a look at Newark, New Jersey, Mayor Ras Baraka. I'm sitting back waiting all these years to see the collaboration between our mayor and the mayor of Newark, and seeing the crime rate go down because of pilot programs that he's put forth, because of the way that he has innovatively used his crisis management team, the way that innovatively he has used his mental health experts. Why have we not joined in this pilot or talk to Ras about how he does these things? As mayor, this is what the types of innovation that I would be looking for in an Adrienne Adams administration. Let's take a look at what's working at cities that look like New York. Right. This is one: crime prevention, mental health crisis, and how to help folks in mental health crisis and not criminalize mental health, Errol. We're really good at criminalizing a whole lot of stuff here in New York, and it does nothing to make us safer. It does nothing to help folks who are in crisis. So I want to look at that model. There are also several different models. We took a look at how to do trauma recovery centers that we're doing now so successfully. I want to expand that as mayor. We're taking a look at how to expand the way that other things are done. I want to collaborate with other women mayors. I want to collaborate.
Oh, there you go.
See? Okay. I want to collaborate with Michelle Wu in Boston. I want to collaborate with our D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser. I want to collaborate with Cheryl Parker in Philadelphia. Oh, I've got ideas. Just let me jump out of this box, and into the next innovative space that we can do good for all of New York City.
Okay. Now, a recent poll showed you as more competitive than any other candidate, including Zohran Mamdani, in a matchup against Andrew Cuomo. As a practical matter, is that an argument that you're comfortable making? Saying, like, look, if you don't want that guy, I'm the one who's most likely to beat him.
It's true. It's true. Since day one, we've known that. My team has known that. The people that, including family members that encouraged me to run, knew that the minute that I jumped into this race, that it would be the least thing that Andrew Cuomo would ever want to see. He has been involved in the same base that I am involved in. But it's a little bit of a different flavor because I understand my base. I understand why some have gravitated to Andrew Cuomo. I don't think that he quite understands that, but I do. And I've been able to tell the truth.
Yeah, what's the answer to that? Why have some gravitated to him? And I'm not talking about the leadership, because some of that is just
politics.
Craving calculation, yeah.
Correct. No, I understand. It is because he has been, the face of New York State politics, primarily during the COVID crisis. I understand that. He was the one delivering the news, and to a tremendous population of my base, he was delivering statistical news that people wanted to hear. And I dare say, because communities of color were dying at a higher rate than most communities in this nation, that it made that connection even closer in looking at, this is the man that is helping to get us out of this. The other side of the story, which I tell and remind folks, and when I remind folks, the eyes just get wider. Hey, you're right. New York City under Andrew Cuomo maintained the same percentage status as the rest of the nation when it came to the highest deaths of Black and brown communities. That's a fact. New York City, the rate of getting PPE and vaccinations into communities of color were slow walked in communities of color when it didn't have to be that way and should not have been that way. Our hard workers in our hospitals were wearing garbage bags under Andrew Cuomo. Didn't have to be that way. I had to take my own father across city lines into a Long Island hospital because paramedics advised us not to take him to Elmhurst Hospital because that was the epicenter of the epicenter. Those are facts. I'm not making that up. But that is the story that some people do not remember or don't want to remember. Who was leading us during the time that we were experiencing in our communities the highest rate of death across the city, and really making us commiserate with the rest of the nation as far as the death rates are concerned. Those are facts. That's something that's a part of his record that he does not admit, but it is something that I, am not going to forget. And I think that is the thing that some New Yorkers have forgotten.
Before I let you go, there is a scenario in which, regardless of who wins the Democratic primary, there's a slot for an Adrienne Adams to run in November as a candidate of another party, or we don't have to get into the gamesmanship of it. Is that something you're thinking about?
I am focused, Errol, on winning this primary, and that is where the eggs in the basket fall right now for me, is winning this primary and making sure that I become the first woman mayor.
There you go. There you go. See, it wasn't that hard to say it, right?
No, not at all. Not at all. I love saying it.
And some of us hear that and they cheer, I mean, I got 3 older sisters. I got, 6 sisters-in-law, and I have been raised by strong Black women, and so it doesn't bother me at all. It sounds kind of familiar, not a bad idea at all.
That's right.
Not a bad idea at all.
That's right.
Best of luck. We'll see you at the debate.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. A pleasure.
Do you want more conversations with the people who are shaping the future of New York City and beyond? Check out our New York One podcast channel in the description. And hit subscribe to let Spectrum News be your resource for balanced, in-depth political coverage, elections, and issues.